Welcome to another NFL Daily on Bleacher Report. I'm Mitch, and I'm here back with another NFL Draft live stream. In this live, we're breaking down what will it take to jump to the first overall pick? What will it take to jump up in the draft and select one of the top quarterbacks in the 2025 NFL Draft? We're talking NFL Draft trade packages for the three top projected prospects at the quarterback position in this year's NFL Draft. So make sure you're in the live chat. Let me know if you want your favorite team to make a move for Ward, for Sanders, for Milroe in this draft. Let me know which one you prefer, which one you want, and what you would give up to get that player. And we will provide exact details in terms of the trade and what it would take, and in terms of the value that the team that is trading would also get in return. So let's get started here. Trade packages for Shadeur Sanders, Cam Ward, and Jalen Milroe. We're going to talk Ward and Sanders in the top 10 range of the draft, and we're going to talk Jalen Milroe when it comes to the early second round, all right? So let's get started right out of the gates. There have been rumors that the Tennessee Titans could potentially actually move on from that first pick. They would actually maybe be interested in passing up on a quarterback and trading that pick away. Maybe they would pick a top prospect at that position, Travis Hunter, Abdul Carter, whoever they prefer. But maybe they could also get more assets in return for that first pick and still get one of the top generational prospects that they want at, let's say, the third overall pick. So our first trade package, our first trade proposal is that the New York Giants, the team that most desperately needs a quarterback right now, moves up to the first overall pick, swaps with the Tennessee Titans for that pick. Now, in terms of the details, we're going with the first pick for the third pick and the second round selection of the Giants. That would be 34th, okay, for this year's draft. So simple return, third pick and the 34th pick to move up to number one, to secure your guy, to secure your quarterback. Now, in my opinion, if a team is making a trade for the first pick, I do believe it would be for Cam Ward. And I do believe that Cam Ward across the NFL is seen as a higher regarded prospect so far, okay? But Sanders could also be in that discussion. Now, in terms of the breakdown of both prospects within the fit for the Giants, I think that Ward would make more sense because I think he provides more athleticism and more playmaking capabilities. And when you're talking about Brian Daboll, you know, the biggest example of what he's been able to do at the NFL level is Josh Allen and the development of Josh Allen in Buffalo. It's a big reason he got the job in New York. So getting a playmaker, a composed guy behind that can see the field, make those extra moments and take those moments and make a big throw, an occasional scramble, but be a guy that's going to be able to do more for an offense than just from within that pocket. I think that's probably the direction the Giants would lean. That being said, if they go with Sanders, I don't think it would be too far off because Daboll originally, you know, let's just say he was a Patriot guy once upon a time. So he had plenty of experience of being within that offense where they had Tom Brady behind center, and they could very much figure out a pocket-centric offense with Sanders as well. So whichever direction they choose, whichever direction they want to go, that would be the first pick, in my opinion, for the Giants, going with the quarterback. It just makes too much sense here for the Giants to make a move, right? And to me, when a team so desperately needs a spark, so desperately needs a new quarterback, a new face of the franchise, when a team so desperately needs to make that move, it honestly doesn't even really matter what they're giving up. Like, so to just only give up a second round pick in the large scheme of things, I honestly think it's well worth it to secure your guy. Because at number 3, well, now you're maybe dealing with another team having to trade up to number 1 and stealing your guy. Maybe you're dealing with Tennessee themselves picking a quarterback. Maybe you're dealing with Cleveland at 2 picking a quarterback. So for the Giants, it's about moving up, securing your future, securing your guy, and hopefully, for Daboll and Shane's sake, buying a little bit of time for their franchise and within their franchise. So that's the first trade proposal. The pick swap, just to clarify, it would be 1 for 3 and 34. Okay. Now, the second trade of this live is going to be, once again, high in the draft, but we're gonna look at a different selection to move up to, and that is the Cleveland Browns' second pick in the draft. So let's just say the Tennessee Titans, as the rumor suggests recently, they're going to pass on a quarterback and they take the best prospect that they deem is in the draft, whether that be Hunter, Carter, or whoever they want to pick, okay? So they go and they pass on a quarterback. That number 2 pick all of a sudden becomes so interesting because does a team try to move ahead of the Giants to get a quarterback, right? Obviously, the Giants could move up one spot. That could obviously happen. But what about the Jets? The Jets also need a quarterback, right, guys? The Jets also need a quarterback. Aaron Rodgers isn't coming back. So why not the Jets make that bold move up from number 7 to number 2 with the Cleveland Browns? And in order for this to work, I went with the 7th pick for the Jets plus a 2026 first round pick for that second overall selection. So I went a little bit different here. Instead of going with the second rounder, we went with a future first rounder. This would actually be more equal in trade value according to the trade charts. And I tried to stick to the trade charts as best I could in terms of the value that a team would need for these moves to actually be made. So I tried to make it as realistic as possible. But this would make sense because the 2026 draft is perhaps looked at as stronger in NFL circles. So that pick could be coveted, as well as the fact that it would be the Jets pick. So that very likely would be a high selection. And for Cleveland to have to move off of this pick, especially if the Titans pass on a quarterback, there's probably going to be a lot of intrigue from teams like the Raiders, from teams like the Jets, right? So there's going to be and the Giants, there's probably going to be multiple teams that are trying to get that selection, which is going to only move up the price of admission, basically, right? So I have the Browns trading to the Jets. Now, who would the Jets pick? Whichever one they so choose. We don't really know what their offensive staff is fully going to look like yet, so I don't really truly know which direction they would go. But either way, whether it be Ward or whether it be Sanders, whichever one they prefer, whichever style they prefer, that would be their pick, obviously. But I do think that the Jets are a team that when you think about why they would do this, well, they still have a very talented roster, right? Like, they still got pieces like Breece Hall. They got pieces like Garrett Wilson. They have Sauce, who's coming off of a down year, but still good player. Quinnen Williams, a good defense. Like, do they really want to start this Aaron Glenn era off of just basically escaping from Aaron Rodgers and having another rebuilding and retooling year? They don't really want this first year of Aaron Glenn to just be a bridge season or to be like some sort of rebuilding season. So why not just provide a spark right away, get your young quarterback in there and start right away, like hot, with some energy, with some momentum, right? And that would be big for Aaron Glenn, right? Because he's a guy that's coming from Detroit. They're trying to build, that culture. They're trying to build a way of winning. And I think that would just make a statement right away that they're here and they're not messing around, okay? These trade returns are not enough, says Zach. Actually, they are quite enough. D. Carter says number 2 pick holds more value than that. I don't necessarily think so. Again, when you look at the charts, like the 26, let's just say the 2026 first is worth like, let's say it's an average first round pick, which it could be even more than an average first round pick. Could they get a little bit more? Sure. Could you get another 5th in there? Maybe. I don't know. But honestly, I don't think moving from number 7 to number 2 is going to cost more than an extra first round pick in this draft. I think part of this is also based on how the prospects are viewed. I think you also have to take that into account a little bit. Like, there is some risk more inherently here than it feels like in past seasons. But hey, man, I just stuck to the charts and tried to give as accurate of an assessment as I could. And A future first round pick that could be a top 10 pick is extremely valuable, in my opinion. And I do think the Jets, whether they're picking a rookie quarterback or not, they're probably going to have a high pick in the draft. I think many probably see them as the worst team in their division next year. So I do think they should go after a quarterback and be aggressive, whether it be in free agency or in the draft. But I'd probably see them being still probably bottom of the AFC East. Now let's get to that third trade, which is still at the top of the draft within the top 6 or 7 picks. The Raiders are the team that I've mentioned. So we've got the Giants, the Jets, and the Raiders as the 3 teams that I think are going to be heavily involved in the quarterback search and picking a quarterback. The Raiders are interesting because you've got the Tom Brady influence. You've got the connection to Sanders. So let's just say Cam Ward gets selected by the Titans or the Giants, or maybe the Jets make a move up and they pick him, right? Maybe the Raiders could get that second quarterback in the draft. I don't see the Raiders over pursuing for a quarterback, potentially moving all the way up to 1. So I have them making a move just a couple spots up to get to number 4 with the Patriots. Tom Brady using his connection with Robert Kraft, Mike Vrabel, and the Patriots, moving up 2 picks and simply giving up their third round selection, which is 68th overall in the draft, for the number 4 pick. So they would be giving up the 6th pick and a third round pick. Nothing else would have to be returned for the 4th overall pick. It would make sense to me. Just get an extra pick if you're the Patriots. Move back a couple spots, still get a player that you want, whether it be a wide receiver, an offensive lineman. As a Patriots fan, this would still make a lot of sense. And you get an extra third round pick for a roster that you heavily need to build, right? You heavily need to invest in. You need to support Drake May. So I think the Raiders could move up, get their quarterback. This would probably be for Sanders because I think Sanders is more likely to be the second selected. This is more likely that he falls a little bit more likely than Cam Ward, in my opinion, just based on what I'm reading and seeing and all that sort of stuff. So I think if one of the quarterbacks goes inside the top 3, one of them could fall to that 4 to 6 range. And let's say the Jets, the Raiders, they could be interested in moving up with the Patriots. The Patriots are a team that need a lot of assets. So them trading back would make a lot of sense, in my opinion. Ronald says, I see the Raiders moving up with the Titans. They have a lot of picks. The Raiders could do that. They could do that. I'm not going to rule it out. I have the Giants because it's really hard to move up from number 6 to number 1. Like it costs a lot. So to move up from 6 to 4, I think is a lot smarter if they view both prospects as similar value or similar players. But if they view one as a much better player than the other, then that's where it comes into the discussion of how much are we willing to pay to get up to number 1. Because from number 3 to number 1 is way easier to move up, right? Like you look at the difference in how much it would cost. So that's the thing with the Raiders is because they sit at 6, it's going to be hard for them to leapfrog a team like the Giants who clearly want a quarterback, like clearly need a quarterback, right? Why would we trade out of the number 2 pick when we also need a quarterback, says D. Carter. I'm not convinced that the Browns will take a quarterback. And if they do take a quarterback, I'm not convinced that it wouldn't be in the second or the later rounds as well. Like, I'm not convinced that they're fully willing to move off of the Deshaun Watson contract right now. I think they might be willing to wait one more season. So I think what the Browns would look at it as, let's try to get as much capital that we lost with this whole Deshaun Watson trade, that we've lost over the past couple of seasons. Let's try to build an awesome roster, and let's try to build that roster for the future of that position, whether it be next year, a free agent that we're going to bring in, or somebody later on down the road, right? I think the Browns are willing to be a little bit more patient because they have this whole contract hanging over their heads. So I don't necessarily view Cleveland as they have to draft a quarterback. They very well could, and that's a possibility. There are a lot of possibilities. There are a lot of needs for a lot of teams, but I don't necessarily see Cleveland having to press the panic button on the quarterback position. I think they'll be a little bit more patient with that. Okay, so those are the first 3 trades in the first round. We have the Giants moving up to number 1, swapping with the Titans getting the 3 and the 34. Our second trade is the Jets moving from 7 up to 2. They would use their first round pick next season along with the 7th pick to get to number 2 to pick the top quarterback in the class. And then the third trade is the Raiders trading 6 and their third round pick, 68, to get to number 4 for the Patriots to select the second best quarterback in the class. Okay, so those are the first 3 trades. Now we're going to move our attention to the second round. And at the end, guys, we're going to talk about some maybe crazier possibilities of teams that you have to be on the lookout for teams that could maybe make a bold trade up and things like that. So make sure you stick around to the end. But we're talking about Jalen Milroe now. We're talking about the second round. Okay, so these are similar teams as well. The Las Vegas Raiders, let's say they don't pick a quarterback in the first round, and let's say they stick at 6 and they pick at 6. Maybe they take a receiver, maybe they take a defender, maybe they take, I don't know, anybody. Okay, it doesn't really matter. But let's say they like Milroe and they want him in the second round. So a way that they could do that is they could secure their quarterback with the Browns at 33. So the Browns at 33 become really interesting because and there's so much to talk about here, guys. There's so much racing through my mind. So the Browns could rather, like our guy said in the chat, maybe they pick a quarterback at 2. And if they pick a quarterback at 2, maybe they're willing to trade back from 33. If they don't pick a quarterback at 2, maybe they're still willing to and they don't trade back. And let's say they pick Hunter, Carter, I don't know, whoever. Doesn't matter, right? Maybe they look to trade back in the second round. That 33rd pick is always so crucial and so important. So when it comes to that 33rd pick, I've got the Raiders at 37 using their 37th pick and 107 to move up 4 spots to get the 33rd pick. So that would be their second round pick, 37, and 107, which is the 4th round selection for 33. Okay, guys? So basically, the Browns would be moving back 4 spots and adding a 4th round pick to their draft resume. Okay. Now, the Raiders, this fit is interesting. Pete Carroll obviously took a chance on Russell Wilson back in his Seattle days. He's obviously a fan of mobile quarterbacks that can move, that can create, that can make something happen. I'd be intrigued to see, how he would work with the Raiders, but you've already got the 2 tight ends. In the possibility of using a lot of Brock Bowers as their primary weapon moving forward. The Raiders have wanted to be this running first football team. And I think that only is an exclamation point with Pete Carroll coming in as their head coach. So Milroe could provide, obviously a lot of athleticism and explosion to the running game that is similar to Jaden Daniels or Lamar Jackson in that vein of their game. Milroe, though, probably won't be a first round pick because he is kind of flawed as a passer and very, very raw. So he probably needs to be tuned into, probably needs to be coached a little bit more. So a veteran coach like Carroll, a veteran staff the Raiders are bringing in, it would make some sense. And it would also be a pretty exciting pick for the Raider fan base. Maybe they could go after a veteran, maybe they go after Russ, just for example. Maybe they team up Russ with Pete Carroll, and then they also go after a rookie like Milroe, but they don't use their first round pick. So they're still aggressive. They still look to the future. They still look for their future at that position, but they're still willing to maybe give him a year, let him sit, let him learn behind a Super Bowl champ in Russell Wilson, let Russ kind of teach him the ropes, that sort of thing. And Russ seemed to get along with a guy like Justin Fields this season, so there wasn't a lot of tension there overall. So he's already proven that he can kind of be that sort of mentor. So the Raiders, looking for their future at the position while still trying to be a little competitive in 2025. So that's kind of my idea behind that trade. Now, there's another team that would be looking to do something very similar that sits at number 42. That is the New York Jets. We talked about the Jets and how they might make a move early in the first round, but at number 7, it's going to be a lot more difficult for them to make that move than the Raiders or the Giants, right? Or if you even get the Titans involved in that quarterback, if they pick Ward or they pick Sanders, if the Browns are interested in a quarterback, it's going to be extremely hard for the Jets to get a quarterback in the first round. So in the second round, they have pick 42, which is a little bit further deep. They're 9 picks removed from the first pick in the second round, right? So they would need to give up a little bit more. for that 33rd pick. And I want to stick with the 33rd pick. Obviously, they could go and try to trade for 34 or 35 or 36. But I'm just using the 33rd pick because it's the first pick in the second round. And it's always highly discussed. Our team's going to make that move. It's clearly a guy that's extremely talented, that a lot of people really like, that has a high upside and appeal. So the Jets would use their 42nd pick, their 92nd pick, and the 109th selection for 33 and 103. So that's also a little bit different than that Raiders package. The Raiders obviously have 5 picks ahead. They would have to give up a lot less, 37 and 107. The Jets would have to give up that extra pick of 92 in order to move all the way up to the top of the second round, because there's a big difference there. Now, maybe potentially the Jets could get the Browns or another team at the top of that second round to bite on a future second round pick. That's entirely possible. But the Jets might have to kind of be a little bit more aggressive in this second round if they miss out on a quarterback in the first round, because I don't know. What are the Jets going to do, guys? Like, they're not going to run it back with Aaron Rodgers. Like, it's very unlikely. So if they move on from Aaron Rodgers, are they going to go with a veteran quarterback for a year? Are they going to try to do that? And then, it's just, after so much excitement that was the Aaron Rodgers experience, that whole Aaron Rodgers era, the Jets fans were so pumped for it, and it just fell flat on its face. As fast as Aaron Rodgers was to run that American flag in the middle of the field, it was that fast, bro. They've got to, it's kind of crazy, but they've got to circle back, and they've got to kind of turn this around right away, right? They've already made the coaching hire. And like I said, with that first round pick, they've got to get a buzz back in the city. They got to get a buzz back with the Jets. So going with a really upside pick, that's maybe a little risky, but a coveted young talent, they could go that direction. So that's another idea there for that second round. Raiders will go after Dart. Yeah, he's not included in this video, but he's a possibility. Sizz says, if you go in second round, Giants would take him if they don't get Sanders or Ward. This is true, but I think in a majority of the drafts that I was up with a quarterback, whether it be because they're trading up, whether it's because they sit at 3, they're going to pick a quarterback. So I don't really necessarily see the Giants. I think the Raiders, the Jets are more likely to be teams that are flirting with that second round pick selection because they are at 6 and they're at 7, and it's hard to get up to 1 or 2, right? It's harder. Now, we did discuss the possibility of it, but it is definitely harder. Dart in the second or late first with a trade. I'm not exactly sure how high he's going to go. I guess we'll learn about that, but I definitely see many people are high on him. So we could definitely see him in that second round range for sure. All right, let's get to some teams that might not necessarily be thought about right away in terms of the quarterback discussion, but 3 teams that I see as possibly being interested in a quarterback, especially in the second round range. So first of which is the New Orleans Saints. The Saints have Derek Carr, but the Saints are going to have a new head coach and basically and practically a new regime. Now, Derek Carr would be great as a bridge option moving forward for the next year or two, given his contract is still pretty hefty and it's hard to move on from him. But the Saints could be looking at a future player. Now, maybe they could be going after a trade for Joe Milton of the Patriots or something like that. Somebody like that, but they could also be looking at a rookie, let's say Milroe. So, for example, let's go with the Saints having that 40th overall pick, trading up with the Giants at number 34. Now, the Giants, let's say a quarterback lands to them at number 3. They didn't trade up, but a quarterback lands to them at number 3. Let's say they got Sanders at number 3, just for example, okay? Maybe they would be looking to trade back, to potentially add some more assets to help out their depleted roster, which is not very good. So what I have here is the Saints with the 40th pick and the 111th selection, a 4th rounder, going up to 34. That's only 6 picks to select Milroe as their future of the position, right? And again, this is a guy that probably needs to sit a little bit. He is a little bit younger, a little bit raw, so he does need some coaching, but it does appear the Saints are looking in the offensive direction for a coach, and it's heavily thought of that it could be Kellen Moore, which is another interesting thing because I could see Kellen Moore really liking a guy that's, highly functional in a spread system, because that's where Kellen Moore came from at the college level. That's kind of what he got used to, early in his days as a quarterback himself. So that would be a pretty good pairing, in my opinion, and maybe a fit for his offense. So that's intriguing, in my opinion. But the Saints, definitely a team to watch out for. Sneaky. Whether in the second round or in the first round, I think they sit at number 10 overall in the first round, and we'll talk about them in a second. But I do feel like the Saints could definitely make a big move. Now, another team that I think could make a move, as Dro says, this guy is an idiot and thinks the Browns are just going to bend over. The Browns, again, guys, I don't think the Browns... Let's just put it in this way. What if Kevin Stefanski thinks that he can sign Kirk Cousins or Jameis Winston or whoever and get just as much production as he can out of a rookie, for example, for this year? And they have the whole Deshaun Watson contract sitting over their heads. So they've got to think about that. So maybe they instead look at, we've got this guy. We could get the best player in the draft. Let's just pick the best player in the draft, whoever we deem that to be. It's not really hard to think about it. I mean, if I was a Browns fan, I'd be a heck of a lot more nervous about picking a quarterback at 2, given the quarterback talent in this class, compared to picking Travis Hunter or Abdul Carter, who I absolutely think is going to be like a Pro Bowl level player. So, I mean, I'm just throwing that out there. Like, I don't think it's absolutely outrageous that the Browns would just pass up on a quarterback. BT says, Shadeur is not the guy, shouldn't be a top 10 pick, holds the ball way too long. We're going to talk about that in a minute, bro. We're going to talk about that at the end specifically, okay? We're going to talk about if Sanders falls. But let's get to the next trade, which is the Pittsburgh Steelers. The Pittsburgh Steelers are a team that obviously need a quarterback too, right? They got to the playoffs, but the Pittsburgh Steelers had Russell Wilson at quarterback. He's older. He's not the future of the franchise. Justin Fields played a few games. He never got back in. He's not the future of the franchise either. No matter how many fans think he is, he's not, okay? So the Steelers have pick number 52 in the second round, and it would be highly unlikely that the Steelers would make an aggressive move in the first round, because that's not really their MO, but I do feel like the Pittsburgh Steelers could make a move in the second round out of desperation to a certain degree, but also out of like a ceiling. Like the Steelers have such a high floor because of what Mike Tomlin has provided. Like, they literally never have a losing season. They could have any quarterback, Duck Hodges, Mason Rudolph. It doesn't really matter who they have at quarterback, and they still win 9 games, it feels like. So why not go for it? Like, go for a young guy in the second round. And I have the Steelers making a crazy trade here. So they're going to flip the 52nd pick for the Patriots' 38th pick. But it's not, or it's they're gonna get the 38th pick, I should say. They're not gonna flip the 52nd pick. They're gonna keep the 52nd pick, because what they're gonna do is they're gonna have 2 second-round picks, because they're gonna trade their number 1 receiver, George Pickens. Okay, that is the trade. George Pickens and a 5th-round pick at 163 for 38 and a 7th-round pick, 222. Okay, so again, Pickens and a 5th for 38, a 2nd, and a 7th. There are rumors that the Steelers could trade George Pickens, and it makes sense if you watch George Pickens play. Extremely talented, outrageously talented, but an absolute crazy, sometimes, like, I don't know what he's going to do on a football field. He might lose his mind. He might score a touchdown. He might throw his helmet. He might punch somebody, but he's really talented, all right? So that is going to be coveted across the NFL, especially for a team like the Patriots, who so badly need a receiver. So as a Patriots fan myself, could I see a coach like Mike Vrabel taking George Pickens and being like, okay, he's a little bit crazy, but I can hone this in. I can teach this. I can make this guy, I can discipline this guy. We can make this happen. So let's make it happen. We're not good at drafting receivers. Let's just trade for one. Let's say the Patriots don't get T. Higgins or whatever in free agency. So they go and they make a trade for George Pickens. So it would make sense for the Patriots to acquire a number 1 receiver for Drake May, a big, physical, fast receiver who can make plays down the field for their young quarterback. Now for the Steelers, they obviously need a quarterback, okay? And they need future at that position. And their problem for a lot of Steelers fans has been that they've had no, long-term quarterback that they can really like get excited about. And it's just like a floor that they keep hitting. They're just a wild card team. So they need to go after somebody like Jalen Milroe, who has so much talent, right? And you think about Arthur Smith's offense, you think about the quarterback run, you think about all the stuff that he could do within there. And then you also think about Mike Tomlin and this franchise clearly wanted to get that style of quarterback in their building with Justin Fields, but perhaps going with somebody younger that has not maybe reached his ceiling at the NFL level, that is a little bit more of a mystery box, so to speak, would make a lot more sense. So this is kind of a crazy trade. It's probably unlikely, but it does make sense. The Steelers need to make a move for a quarterback, specifically a future quarterback for their franchise. I think it will actually let Mike Tomlin get off the hot seat a little bit, because Tomlin, from his fan base, has been a little bit hot under his seat just because like he hasn't really won a playoff game in quite some time, and there's no foreseeable future at the most important position for his team. So I think making that move from the front office's perspective would also allow him to breathe a little bit in terms of being the head coach of the team. And then for the Patriots, it feels like they're going to be extremely aggressive this offseason. They have draft capital. Let's say in the first round, they go with like, I don't know, they get Carter at 4 or something or like that, right? So they'd still need a receiver. Maybe they even trade back and they get an offensive lineman or something like that. So a receiver, if not found in free agency, could be had via trade, and George Pickens could be available because of the frantic nature of his personality, let's just say. Our 7th and final trade within this trade package video, is going to be the Seattle Seahawks, okay? Could the Seattle Seahawks be interested in making a move for a quarterback? Seattle has picked 50 in the second round. This is actually before the Steelers. Geno Smith is, I like Geno Smith. Like, I think he's a good quarterback. Like, I would call him like slightly above average, but I feel like Seattle, their fan base has kind of grown sick of him to a certain degree. I feel like they sort of feel like they've hit a ceiling, just as the Steelers have, and there's not really any exceeding that. So there's a lot of possibilities here, but I have Seattle trading up to number 36 with Jacksonville. Jacksonville obviously has a new head coach in Liam Cohen of the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. What did he say? A Duval. How did he say it? I don't even know how he said it. I can't even copy that, bro. 50 and 82 for 36 and 143, which is a 5th round pick. So basically it would be a second 50 for a second 36 with a third for a 5th. Okay. So Seattle would be willing to trade up and looking for the future at that position, because once again, they inherited Geno Smith, right? Geno Smith was not their guy. Geno Smith was not the guy that Mike Macdonald specifically looked at and said, that's my leader, that's my quarterback, that's my future of my team. As much as other people might like Geno Smith, I feel like Mike Macdonald's a young coach. He's the youngest in the NFL, if I'm not mistaken. And he has plenty of time to grow this whole operation, like, and have a style of team that he wants to build. And the interesting thing about Mike Macdonald is, where does he come from? He comes from Baltimore, right? So the skill set here with Jalen does kind of resemble Lamar in some ways. I'm not saying he is Lamar, but there are some resemblance to the style that you could play. So you couple Macdonald and his defensive scheme with a somewhat similar style of what you would be able to do with Jalen being Lamar, right? That could make some sense. But then also just giving him some time. So maybe you stick around with Geno for another year, potentially move on for another after next year. So he has a little bit of time to sit. Or maybe you could even trade Geno to a QB needy team like the Jets or like the Raiders. That's also a possibility. Okay. But those are all things that, I kind of wanted to throw out there. So Seattle, I think, is a sneaky team. Seattle, the Steelers, the Saints, those are sneaky teams that I feel like could acquire a quarterback in this draft, whether it be via trade up in the second round, like I just said, or whether it be even the first round. Like, let's say as our guy earlier said, Shadeur falls. And he's not the guy. The NFL doesn't feel like he is a top 5 pick. He's not right up there, okay? Like, I could understand why. Like, I can see some of the things that would worry you. I think that his name certainly, I think, has increased his interest across fans, for sure. There's no debate about that. But let's say he falls. I still think he'll be a first-round pick from all of my understanding. So would the Saints consider him at their pick at number 9? Would the Saints consider him at number 9 in the first round? You know, Derek Carr is their quarterback, like we said, but is he the future of the franchise? I'm not so sure, right? So could he go at number 9? That's a possibility. Then after the Saints, you start to think like, well, if he makes it past the Raiders, if he makes it past the Jets, if he makes it past the Saints, where is he truly going to land? Like, would the Seahawks or the Steelers be willing to pick him, or would they even have to trade up for him, or what? Like, I don't even know, bro. Like, seriously? Would they have to trade up because I don't know, the Rams going to take him as Stafford's long-term replacement? I don't know. It's probably doubtful. They're looking to win a Super Bowl, you know? Like, the Colts haven't given up on Richardson yet. Like, you look at all the teams and you're like, who would truly pick him in that range? So I kind of throw it there and I just say, like, if he falls, maybe the Seahawks or the Steelers make a move. Maybe they could trade up to like 10 or 11. Maybe they trade up with the Niners or with the Bears or Dallas at 12. Like, maybe they move up into that range to try to secure Sanders if he's starting to fall a little bit. The Seahawks or the Steelers could potentially make an aggressive move there if the Saints don't choose him at number 9. But those were all teams I kind of thought about if Sanders does fall, how would that work out? And maybe even the Seahawks, would they be willing to trade Geno Smith to move up in the draft and get a younger player at this position? Just throwing it out there. But I think that's also a possibility. You know, and that's the difficulty with doing these videos, man, is like, there's so many different ways it can go. There's so many different trades. There's so many different possibilities. Like, it's hard to narrow down and be so narrow-minded. You have to kind of think outside the box and think about, okay, what would a team truly want in this situation? If the first round goes this way, how would the second round go? You know, if the first pick goes this way, how's the second pick going to go? And that's why we love mock drafts, man. That's why we love mock drafts. That's why we love the NFL draft, because we're constantly thinking about what could happen in the draft. But that's it, guys. Those are my trades for Sanders, for Ward, for Milroe. Let me know what you guys thought in the comment section. If you want more of my content, you can find me, The Bottom Line View, on YouTube. You can also follow on the BR app. If you're watching this on the BR app, make sure to follow me, as I am here very, very often for NFL Daily on Bleacher Report. Thank you guys so much for watching. It's Mitch, and we'll see you in the next one. Peace.